All right, we are live. Today is Thursday, February 3rd, and this is our weekly developer check-in meeting. Before we get started with items in the agenda, we should go around and have everybody introduce themselves. If you could share your name and where you're from and anything fun you want to share with the group that's not currently on the agenda, that would be great. I'll be happy to go first, and after me, it'll be Nate, and then he'll take over assigning who comes next. So my name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California, and I am very excited about all the activity that's happening in Backdrop right now. Turning it over to Nate.
Thanks, Jen. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm in Oakland, California, and I am a core committer. Today we're going to be doing some 122 planning. Excited to get started on that. And let's see, I'll continue the introductions. We'll go to Martin, followed by Joseph.
I'm Martin. I'm in the UK, and I have my first taste of doing a pull request on core, and I'm just looking to find out how I can get more involved. So.
Awesome, thanks, Martin. Joseph, if you're available to speak, and then Robert. Not sure if we're getting audio from you, Joseph.
Yeah, okay.
We'll come back. Robert, and then Greg.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altoona, California. I work on various odds and ends, lately some contrib modules and documentation.
Thanks, Robert. Greg, and then Wilbur.
I am Greg. I'm joining from Greece. Generally interested in helping out wherever I can. No news that come to mind now. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Wilbur, and then Joseph. Well, I'm not sure Wilbur's at his desk right, or at their desk right now, but let's go to Joseph.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hey, it works. Okay. I'm Joseph. I'm a backend developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am having technical problems with my microphone.
All right. Thanks, Joseph, and thanks everybody for joining today's meeting. Like I mentioned today, we're hoping to turn an eye towards 122 today. That'll be the next release of Backdrop that comes out May 15th. We had hoped to start collecting feedback about what sort of features people are interested in pursuing. We have some features left over from 121 that didn't get completed. I think that may be the bulk of what we discussed today. But we're definitely also open to hearing ideas about things that should be in 122, things that you're excited about working on, or things that we've been trying to get done for a long time that maybe this time will be the release. That's kind of going to be the topic for today. Before we get into that, Jen, do you have any updates from the contrib side of things? You're muted.
There's one new contributed module this week. It's called Notification Bar. I thought I saw this one last week, but I might have just been looking at it earlier. But it essentially allows you to broadcast a message to visitors of your site. So thank you for making that release.
Fantastic. And from the forum post, over on forum.backdropcms.org, we have an event posted every week to collect topics for these weekly meetings asynchronously. And Doc Wilmot left a post in there pointing at issue 4582 that there is a bug in the relationships handling of layout module. In particular, layout relationship author from Node. So this is a new feature, I believe, that we added the ability to pull the author from. So starting with the node context, you can then add in a user context, pulling from the author's the author node, the node's author. There we go. But it looks like in the case of if you do this for a node that comes from the path, like node/10. it doesn't necessarily get you the author of node 10 like you would expect. So he's asking for some eyeballs on that one. Looks like he just opened this 4 days ago, and we have some things to discuss in here. I'll say right now that the way that contexts are added to the layout object, I'm not super thrilled with in the first place. That we do this loose mapping system where inside of the context array, the key really matters a lot. That if it's a numeric key and the key is 1, for example, that means that the context is associated or coming from the first path in the menu position, which is a little bit confusing. So 1 would be the node context, for example, as opposed to 0. But if you were at a path that had the node multiple contexts, it might be 1 for the object coming from the second part of the path, and then 3 for the object coming from the fourth part of the path because it's 0 indexed. And that's and then there's also keys that are just things like logged in user that have strings in them. So it's like this mess of like numeric keys that are menu path locations and then strings that are just kind of arbitrary. And I don't really like the way that that works, but I'm not sure that we'll be able to change it anytime soon because those things have meaning. But it might be nice if we could not be so dependent upon the keys and come up with some other way that more clearly identified where these contexts were coming from. I'm not sure if that'll actually factor into this particular issue, but it's also possible that because the context system, the way things are keyed is so confusing, that's the root of this problem, that either we overrode a key and introduced a bug because of the funny way the contexts are listed, or there's a misunderstanding in the attempting to get the right context, and maybe it is correct after all. It's definitely something that's pretty easy to get mixed up. So I don't really have anything else to say really on 5482 because it'll take some diving in to get more information on that one. Robert, I think you've done a fair amount of layout work as well. No?
I've done a little on layouts, but this is new to me.
Well, I'm hoping that I could recruit you to help triage on this as well. Maybe we can figure it out together.
I'll look into it further.
Okay. Well, that's the item that we've got from the forum post today. Then we'll take a look at 122. The first item that we've got that I think needs to be completed as soon as possible is issue 3992, dropping support for PHP earlier than 5.6. Earlier, less than. So we're going to, issue 3992 is where we established the policy on this. We've already put into 121, the current release, big red errors that say if you're running an older version of PHP prior to 5.6, it's now throwing errors on the status report saying that you got to get off of 5.6 or got to get off of 5.3, 5.4, or 5.5 as soon as possible because the next release coming out May 15th will not support it. So in issue 9392, I filed a pull request to go ahead and increase that minimum PHP version. There's a constant in bootstrap.inc that lists the minimum version. There's a couple of kill switches where Backdrop just absolutely refuses to run on anything lower or anything below the minimum PHP version that we specify, which got moved up to 5.6 in that pull request. And then there's a large number of workarounds for older versions of PHP. So there's all of those three changes, and I think all three of those things have been taken into account in that pull request, but we have a mysterious problem with the test runner that for whatever reason, it looks kind of like PHP doesn't have write access to the file system, possibly. But it seems to be specific to GitHub Actions and possibly the setup PHP workflow action that we're using from GitHub Actions. If we set it to PHP 5.5, it runs fine. And if you run it locally, it also runs fine. And so we have this nebulous problem that's specifically running PHP 5.6 through GitHub Actions using the setup PHP action doesn't work for some reason. It's kind of a frustrating little problem. So I think the next step there is to what I'll try, but I'm saying this out loud, so if anybody else wants to try as well, install the GitHub command line tool, GitHub CLI, and then the GitHub Actions CLI as well, so that way you can run GitHub Actions locally through Docker, rather than needing to run the workflows as pull requests. And then once running those locally, it'll be easier to debug exactly why this isn't working correctly, rather than pushing a thousand changes up to GitHub and having GitHub run the actions. So we're a little bit stuck on that particular point. We could bump the PHP version, but not increment the tests that are running. But like, we really kind of need to get that figured out, because our tests should be running on the minimum PHP version. And so we can't go running 5.5 seems a little bit weird. And then if you go upwards to PHP 7, it's like completely different. So I don't know. We need to get it sorted out.
Nate, which issue number was that? Is 3992? Is that one the one?
Correct. Yep.
Did you happen to take a look at Indigo Zala's pull request, where it seems that the PHP ini seems to be in different locations?
I did not see that. Oh, this is so great. I didn't see this. She just posted this last night, it looks like. There's a general problem with her tests. Okay. I filed a separate PR issue for this. Okay, well, this isn't quite the same.
Yeah, so this is the one that I was referring to, but the PR for the one that you're saying, 3992, from what I'm looking at the PR that Indigo Zala has put together, there's an inline comment that says ini files for PHP 5.6 are in etc/PHP, whereas in prior versions it used to be in user local PHP. So it used to be different locations of the PHP ini file. So I'm not sure if that's the issue, but yeah.
Okay, well, this is good. Should I include the fix? Okay, well, let's at least start with the other pull request that she filed. It's issue 5490, that she fixes some paths. But yeah, I don't think that this will solve our underlying problem, but she seems to have kind of a better idea than I do about what's happening here.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's also the one that set up our GitHub Actions in the first place, so I think she may be our best domain expert in this particular area.
Yeah, I've already RTBC'd the other one, the one that fixes the test, the file paths in the test files, because I found it to be, first of all, it's just the same change on multiple files and simple one, and then I confirmed as well on my local and on the PR sandbox, so it works.
Oh, I see. She also filed a pull request for 3992.
Exactly.
That is for the file system permissions. I didn't see this. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, I can merge this into my pull request that does the 5.6 change, and we'll see if it then runs, and then put it all in together. Oh, wonderful. And it does look like it's some kind of,
yeah, specific
it is some kind of thing. Yeah. Interesting. It's okay, it's actually the location of the, oh, it's the location of the PHP FPM configuration file, which probably means that it's not like a file system thing so much as like
PHP configuration.
Yeah, it's like, it's probably like if the PHP if the configuration file isn't found, something like the path rewriting might not work, like htaccess might not be picked up or something funny like that. So it might be like the tests that are using clean URLs are all failing. That's a pretty common consequence of the web server being misconfigured. That would explain why some tests pass, but most of them don't. That would do it. Okay, well, awesome. Well, I was gonna ask for more help, but looks like help has already arrived. That's fantastic. Okay, great. Well, that puts us in a really good spot then. I'll take another look at that. That's issue 3992. Let's see, let's go to the next. Okay, so now we'll run through the other issues that got bumped from 121. And the first up, I'm going to go to yours, Greg. Custom required validation messages, issue 5348. Could you give us an update on the state of that?
That was like 98, 99% there. I just last minute discovered something that was not working as expected in the search form, as in it wasn't retaining the search stem properly after the form was submitted. I'll put some details because I failed to go back and document what the problem is, what was holding it up. But I'm trying to figure out the last details. It was a bit tricky. I gave it a couple of tries, but I'll make sure that I post what the problem is there because others might help.
Okay, great. All right. I see Peter has joined us. Peter, are you able to speak right now? We're going through the issues that were bumped from 121, one of which is 599, the trim on word boundary, for which you're an advocate. And I'm not sure if we're kind of springing this on you since you just showed up, but if you're able to give us any kind of update, or we can loop back around if you would prefer.
No, I can, I can try. I mean, I haven't looked at it much lately since I think we bumped it, but the situation was that there's trimming on word boundaries, so making it so it's not trimming on like paragraph or sentence, but closer to the actual character limit that you want by doing the actual word. And then there's a separate issue, which is trimming, like counting the number of trimming characters without the HTML. So if you've got like images and lots of HTML, it'll cut that out before it counts the trim count sort of thing. And both of those are very similar in that I think the solution to both of them is to use a function that's in one of the Drupal modules that they pulled from Cake PHP, and that does this whole big function that does all the trimming and the counting and all that sort of stuff. And that seems to be the most robust option that I've seen, but it does everything in one go. And I don't know how to sort of like cut it down to make it do just one thing for one issue and one thing for another issue. I think it's best to just combine both issues, put that function in there, and then just do everything at once. So that's, I think, from memory where the issue was up to.
Okay. The thing about any robust, complicated functionality, if we don't trim it down and it uses more capabilities than we actually use, then we probably need to have test coverage for the functionality that doesn't have displays in it. Because if we don't have any test coverage and there's some hidden functionality in core and some module starts using it, unless we have tests to confirm that we're not breaking it, we could inadvertently break it and not have any idea until a poor contrib or custom module author comes to us and says, I was depending on this and it broke. So I'm not immediately opposed to the, like, let's just put this giant thing in from Cake PHP, but let's just make sure that if we do put it in, that we have adequate coverage.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, and the last one we have that got bumped from 121 is the hidden path content type, issue 4903. Olaf and Tim seem to be the people best connected on this issue, and neither of them are here today. Although it does look like they've Olaf posted something as recently as this week. it does kind of look like I think that we're trying to move towards using the approach that is already completed, that there's already a pull request that is out there that is pretty good, although there's a lot of hope that maybe we could do it better, but that would involve more work, either using a flexible layout or creating a new layout specifically for the homepage, new custom layout specifically for the homepage. And I think that our general approach is we already have something that's working right now that makes a new homepage as well as this new content type. We can proceed with that and then try to iterate on it. It does only affect new installations of Backdrop. So we have the opportunity to, do as best as we can for new installs now and then improve upon it later to, again, make them better yet. And since it doesn't impact any existing sites, we have a lot of flexibility there. Anybody else have any updates or anything they'd like to add about issue 4903? Okay. All right. Well, those are all of the issues that we have that were bumped from 121. I think we've got a good chance of getting all of them completed. That PHP 5.6 we can get done really pretty quickly, I think. I'd like to open the floor a little bit here and just see if anybody has informal suggestions for 122 features. We're kind of going to try to get a better formalized system by soliciting like suggestions on Twitter and collecting ideas from Zulip and the forum, then assembling all those together and then voting on them. But I don't think it would hurt to go ahead and start like brainstorming some ideas now to just start to like put some on the table. Does anybody have anything already that they think they're going to be taking a look at in this next release?
There was some recent discussion about how inconvenient it is for layouts that have sidebars when there's no content in the sidebar, and these are sort of like kept there like as a blank space. My last comment, although I didn't follow up on that issue, was that at some point when we decided to put Radix into core, what we did is we moved the existing things into a legacy folder, and we added hidden equals true to them, so we didn't break existing sites. So the decision to have this behavior where empty regions are retaining the space that they would normally take up if there were blocks in them was back in 2015, 2016, and most people seem to agree that it's not appropriate anymore. Or yeah.
Well, that's the other way around actually. The expand and collapse in columns was something that was popular in Drupal, so it's a really old pattern, and we adopted a modern one by keeping this space that's like a usability improvement, because you can't have your text read more than like 80 characters in line or people can't read it. But I think that what we're seeing now is all of these people who are coming from Drupal who are accustomed to the old design patterns that aren't up to modern standards want those back. And so I think what we need to do is add a set of old style design patterns that people from Drupal can have that functionality. So like a contrib layout that makes all of Backdrop's cores like behave like Drupal 7s. And then that way, anyone who had that functionality in Drupal would be able to get the same functionality when they move to Backdrop without like breaking their theme or their current patterns. But I don't think that we should take a step backwards and reintroduce all of the problems that we fixed when we put that in.
Yeah, just an idea. Can that be implemented as a region setting?
No, because it's a bunch of markup changes.
Okay.
I think it could be if we created a new, like in a new layout template or layout project. As long as we accounted for it in the markup, we could do that. But I don't think we can change existing core markup to account for that. Like the way that there's no variables in there now. And so if we had to like rewrite the templates to put in variables for that, it would be hard. But I think in new templates, we could do something smarter with class handling that would allow that to happen.
Exactly, yeah.
It could possibly be a part of flexible layouts, because flexible layouts class structure is determined on the fly.
Yeah.
That when it's rendered on the admin side, it could ignore the setting, and because they also have settings already, like regions have settings in the flexible layout builder, like the classes and things like that. It could be an option in there, and then when it's rendered on the front end, it could respect the setting and show or hide any columns that are empty. But during the admin interface, of course, it would need to show the empty rows, or the empty
So you could put
regions, so you
blocks
could
in them.
configure them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wonder if that might serve the need. It really depends on where we're heading in the future. Like if we start using flexible layouts for everything, like out of the box, then that would effectively make all layouts have the option. But yeah,
Also,
I'm a little iffy on that whole approach to things. I think it's a cool idea, but it makes me nervous.
so that's a good point, Nate, that all of the flexible layouts already are built with variables. So that's a good solution. But another thought, Greg, this is just that remind me, is you had a suggestion before that had a button on a core layout that was like convert this to flexible. That would also solve that problem. If somebody had like a core layout and they wanted to make that column disappear, if they had that convert button and then flexible layouts gave them that ability to ignore those columns or expand into that space, that could be a nice solution for that. And then we wouldn't need a whole layout package.
Yeah,
That's a duplicate core.
I think that I have two issues, which is basically two entry points to the same thing. So it's one, to have a button in its layout that says make this a flexible one, or which basically doesn't make it one, it creates one off of that. It still keeps it. And then the other one is when you click the add flexible layout button, the first page that you see gives you an option. Would you like to use one of the existing layouts as a template? And then it generates one of those. So it would be the same feature basically, but two different entry points.
I like it. I like both. Although I think we need to be careful about using the word template.
Yeah, sure. yeah, the layout template.
Use the layout template as a template for the template.
Yeah, fortunately, we got most of those terminology things sorted out finally.
Yeah, but now we're going to introduce another one.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a layout configuration and a layout template, and we try to use those words. And then there's also, a layout instance.
Yeah.
And that's the one that we typically refer to also just as a layout.
This is now a starting point for a flexible layout template. So that starting point is what Greg used template for, because it's the right use of the English word template, but not the
flexible template.
Exactly.
If only we knew all these things when we started naming things, like in 2015, where it was and we also have something that cannot be changed easily, the fact that a project type is layout when it shouldn't be. Like the machine name is layout and it should be layout template, as in we say type equals layout. It's not.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, Greg.
But that also exciting things for 122, though, that convert this layout to be flexible could be a fun feature for that.
That's still in idea phase, really, isn't
it? Yes.
Okay.
Saying.
I have a less fun possible feature for the next version. I just made a pull request the other day for issue 4013, which is about being able to fully delete text formats. Currently, we can only disable them, and now we can re-enable them. But this is a follow-up to be able to fully delete them now. So there's a pull request that is awaiting review and testing.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. As you know, there's lots of concerns around deleting text formats, but done correctly, done carefully, it should be possible.
Do we have a way in Backdrop to figure out all the places that need to be updated in the update hook for that? I know in Drupal that was why it was not possible to delete them, but now that we have everything in configuration, we might know.
I don't think we can still, because think about views. Any view anywhere in its configuration can decide, hey, this thing is a text format, and we don't know where in the views configuration file that thing is, that plugin handler that uses a text format.
So that could be like any contrib module that adds a views handler. Like it might not come from views core. Is that the
Yeah. Because there's still no registry of like where is a text format used. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't still have the ability and come up with a fallback behavior of some kind. It's a little bit less dangerous than it used to be. I think the primary concern previously was if you used the PHP text format and then you felled back to plain text, you could reveal sensitive PHP code to the front end, but nobody's doing PHP code in their text formats anymore. And if they are, it's not our problem. Really.
I've seen these Drupal 7 sites.
Yeah.
In the quick testing that I did, it seemed like before I worked on this pull request, I tested the current functionality in Backdrop now, which is where you can delete a text format. So I had a text format enabled, used some content, disabled it, and then I went back to edit it. And after a refresh of that page, after the cache refresh, it would come up saying like it was no text format selected, and you had to sort of select one. So we have this ability in core already that handles disabling a text format, meaning it's not got a text format. You have to save one with a new one or whatever. So to me, deleting one is just a matter of deleting the config file and then using the existing functionality to select a new one if you try to edit also that content.
Yeah, the problem isn't editing, it's viewing. Like what do you, when you view a format with a disabled thing, does it show it as plain text or does it hide it? Or
it hides it fully, I think, from the
so that would be fine if we went with a hide it fully thing.
Well, I think it already does that. So disabling it, so deleting the text format is just deleting the config file basically.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. My impression of what should happen is that if it's disabled but in use somewhere, it actually still works on view. But I might be wrong about that. And if they're already hiding it, then it's no worse deleting it.
I
mean, we can discuss in the issue, but I would disagree because if you have a view and you disable it, you don't want to still be able to view the view.
Does it post something in Watchdog to indicate that happened?
It's also a good idea. I don't think it does, Robert. I think it just silently
really
changes something. Especially if it's deleted, you'd want a log of that. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, sounds great, Peter. It's issue 4013.
Yep. So post any reviews and comments and stuff there, and we can discuss.
Does it have a milestone candidate tag on it?
Yep.
Okay, great.
It does. Oh, sorry, it doesn't yet. Milestone candidate. Yeah, sorry, but it's not.
Not in the milestone, just in
Not
the
in the
candidate
milestone,
label.
yeah.
I have a question. This has come up recently. I can't remember if it was an InitiaQ forum or Zulip, but it's my understanding that the layouts in Backdrop were built based upon an early version of Bootstrap 4, and people now seem to be keen on using Bootstrap 5. And I'm not like I only recently started working on themes and trying to port things, but is there any way that we can, without breaking existing sites, like backwards compatible way of upgrading to Bootstrap 5 and still keeping Bootstrap 4 compatibility? Or do we just tell people use a contrib thing that offers that?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know what all the
look
specific differences are. Yeah, I would imagine that just swapping out a library for another version would cause a bunch of problems because it expects the markup to be a specific way, and all of our core markup assumes Bootstrap 4. But there could be a way that we add a backwards compatibility layer in there so that all of the 4 stuff is still supported, but I don't know how complicated that would be.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see where, I don't even know where Bootstrap right now is.
They released a stable, they released the stable version of 5 in December. That's why people started asking. And I think there's a comment in their documentation that says you should not be using 4, you should start using 5 or something like that. So.
Oh, hang on.
And I have talking about themes, I'm not sure we'll be able to work on that because I don't know what's involved, but there's a long-standing issue about treating themes as modules and allow them to be installed and uninstalled properly and include install files, so update hooks and things like that. So if anyone else is keen on working on that, I think it'd be, yeah, great.
Okay, sorry, I was doing a lookup on things. I'm curious if Bootstrap is a dependency of our layouts or if it's added someplace else. Because if Bootstrap is a dependency of the layouts, in theory, that would mean that certain layouts are tied to certain grid systems, and that would make it so that it would be tedious, but we could make a Bootstrap 5 version of all of our layouts and then do the same thing again where we transition from 4 to 5. In this case, because it would be a really apples to apples transition, it's possible that we could provide some kind of tool to say, like, convert all of my things from 4 to 5 and just like flip them, and then hide all of the old layouts again, deprecate them, and then they would go away and backtrack too.
Yeah, and the other thing I was saying, I recently started trying to port themes, and there's a need sometimes to just, as part of the theme, move blocks around. So the default blocks in the admin layout, and it could, in theory, be done easily if there was an install hook or an update hook that could run with the themes, but it's not possible as it is. And my only workaround was like, instead of creating a theme, you would have to create an installation profile that includes the theme and a module that does things, or a dependency.
It's a little different in Backdrop because the theme has no idea what any of the regions are. Like, you couldn't have an update hook in a theme that wouldn't use any region name because the regions are dependent on which layouts you're using. And so there's no correlation there. In Drupal, it was really common that you'd have to move blocks around. But in Backdrop, you wouldn't want to do that in your theme. That update hook would need to be in like a custom module or something that's very specific to that site. It couldn't match a theme.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to port Claro. So it's an admin theme. And I know that I need to tweak a specific layout, which is the default admin layout. So the target layout would be a specific layout. And the block would be
you couldn't be sure that any site running that theme was using that layout. So it wouldn't go in the theme. It would have to go in this for the site that was running it.
Fair enough.
And you wouldn't also know if that site had that block. I mean, if it's like the main content block, it's fairly safe to assume, but it's a little risky. There's a lot of stuff that's dependent on other configurations. You could test your way through it, but
yeah, the other thing would be to just have a note or instructions on README on how to achieve that. Like, as in, you need to move the breadcrumb thing there in another region or whatever. Yep.
that'll work.
Okay, we're almost out of time here, but there's one more issue that I want to raise just as a maybe this time issue 1301, which is add reference module to core. This has been changing directions a lot. Most recently, the issue or the direction has changed that we're looking at pursuing entity reference, putting entity reference in core after all. Our primary concerns in the past had been that entity reference was a little bit of a mess. It depended on entity plus module, which we're not ready to just put that wholesale into core. Herbduel has been taking those complaints and putting some action behind it, and he has already removed the dependency. My understanding is removed the dependency on entity plus, so that now entity reference module, the contrib version, works without it, so it does not have any external dependencies anymore. And he's working on cleaning up the code base to make it so that it's less of a mess. And so those are the primary concerns that we had. about using entity reference, the contrib module, and Herbdul has been working to mitigate those problems. So if those problems have been resolved, then that makes it a lot better candidate. There's other good arguments for using entity reference, like it's the most flexible solution. It's already the most widely used solution, I think, both for Backdrop and for Drupal 7. And it also has a pretty good suite of modules that depend on it. And if we were to leverage it directly, we could use our standard approach to like merging a module into core and just saying, hey, there's a contrib module by the same name, please disable it. The same thing that we did for like redirects module and link module and email module, like all of these other modules that we just move them wholesale into core. So that also changes our approach to what needs to be done here, that primarily where we need to be focusing our efforts is in the contrib module space, working on entity reference module directly. Any other problems that we have with entity reference or any other preparation that we need to do, we should be doing that in the contrib queue. I'm not totally sure that we are 100% like this is the direction we're going now. It's just that Herb has removed all of the big complaints about entity reference that now makes it a much stronger contender than it was previously. So we need to start and reconsider our options again and decide which one is the best way forward. It is kind of the case that entity reference has some advantages that other modules will not be able to meet, like being the most popular and having the most dependencies. Because like us working on the other modules doesn't really get over that barrier, and entity reference already starts with it. So in a way, this is now like the path of least resistance has probably changed here. And so we need to go back and look at the options again, which is great. So it's a good problem to have that something that had been eliminated is not actually. So, and again, big shout out and appreciation to Herbdul for taking that on and taking this very seriously, the feedback that we have and then addressing it. So really great.
Quick question on that.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
What's going to happen? Like if entity reference ends up making into core, like the one that we choose to put into core, what happens with, I think it was reference, whatever the one that we were building for Backdrop specifically, what happens to that? Like, I imagine we're not going to make it a contrib module because, I mean, what's the point? So is that code just then gone, or what?
I would like to work on an upgrade path from reference to entity reference, and then we can mark the contrib module as deprecated and recommend people switch to entity reference.
Yeah, but it will still exist in contrib, just like references module, the one that contains node reference and user reference. It'll continue to just kind of hang out in contrib probably for a long time to come.
Probably till 2.x. Because it'll still, like all the sites that are using it now will still work until Backdrop 2 or it doesn't get an update. But I think if we provide that conversion path for people, they'll have an easier way to get onto the supported core version.
Yeah, the really tricky thing with those reference modules is that because they're structural, their configuration ends up in things like views and in layouts and all over the place. It's not just a problem of the data being changed from the database schema and updating content, which is already a challenge enough, then updating the field configuration, which that's fairly straightforward. But then all of the places those things are used is really where it just gets really challenging. Yeah. Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour. We got a little bit of a late start today, but I think we need to wrap up. Does anyone have any things that they would like to add before we close?
Just pointing out that Dr. Modon Zulip is asking for attention on 5482. I mentioned that the layout relationship thing, and he needs feedback on whether the fix is reasonable, the fix that he's proposing.
Sorry, you said 5480?
5482.
Oh, 5482.
That's the first issue we talked about today.
Yeah.
And I reassured Dr. Wilmot that it's on your radar. Just making sure.
Yeah. yeah, I hope I'll be able to take a look. Okay, that's it for today then. Thank you all for joining the meeting. Hoping that we'll continue to talk about 122 for the next couple of weeks. And it does look like with Indigo Zella's help, we might be able to get that 5.61 knocked out right away. So that would be great. Well, thank you all. Hope you all have a great week.